Let's stay with the story because Ioannou is an assistant professor of strategy at the London Business School and joins us. Ioannou, great. I should get a prize just for saying your surname correctly. Can I start on this investment bank, the European Investment Bank? Seriously, it could actually claw back this money. It lent billions to Volkswagen to develop low emissions engines. Volkswagen obviously haven't done that, or they've done it, but with a bit of the cheating software.
There's two angles to this, Aaron. One is the responsibility of the European Investment Bank itself. Obviously, if VW is in a scandal, that means that the bank is failing to meet its carbon emissions targets, right? So we see a dimension of accountability which goes beyond the financial performance of VW. In this case, its environmental performance, and that's seriously taken into account when.
So a Volkswagen failure means a European Investment Bank failure.
Exactly. And this is, on the other hand, potentially an opportunity for the bank as part of the finance sector to restore the trust that has been lost in the sector itself. Because now we see more responsible lending. And we have seen this with Citigroup earlier in the week, trying to reduce its exposure to coal miners, for example. Again, a strong signal of responsibility that goes beyond simply the financials of a company.
So it's interesting. So that could be a positive out of all this, more responsibility within the financial sector. But I'm wondering if another positive lining out of all this would be, you know, more realistic emissions testing. Because it is a joke, right? Consumers have endured it, and we've been told these fibs that, oh, you buy this Volkswagen, this BMW, whatever the car, you're going to get 30 miles to the gallon. And in effect, we know that's not true, is it?
Right, and I think there lies the long-term, potentially the long-term opportunity for Volkswagen, right? Because it is a failure from Volkswagen, it's a scandal, a scandal, but at the same time, we've seen that the emissions testing has basically failed outside the lab. So if I were Volkswagen right now, I would start thinking long-term, and not just in terms of apologies or but solid commitments, solid investments, and the emissions testing is one such ground. I would form partnerships with APA, for example, or other governments and say, look, let's get a third party, let's set up a foundation with scientists, and let's improve emissions testing. In other words, simple compliance at this point is not going to rectify the situation. It has to be a more proactive approach by Volkswagen.
And just very briefly, it does seem like Volkswagen, that what they've set aside, around $7 billion to cover the cost, that's still unrealistic. They haven't budgeted on that. It could cost them a fortune. Right,
it will cost them a fortune, but again, the question here is how will they restore trust by their customers, their investors, and through the regulators? And I would argue that that's a more important long-term cost that they need to account for. Remember that by paying all these fines, for example, or being potentially criminally liable, that means funds are not going to be available for future innovation projects or the next generation of cars. Already they're thinking about firing people or cutting R&D projects. So you fix the problem now, but you really need to have an eye on the long term and the next generation of the industry.
The bigger picture. Jan, it's great to have you with us. We really appreciate your time. You stay there. Thank you very much.